Alongside the coronavirus crisis, climate protection remains the most important issue for the real estate industry. The need for action is immense and continues to grow. According to the latest IPCC Assessment Report, climate change is progressing faster than previously thought, but the industry is on the right track. Yes, I think the industry is on the right path with climate protection. It's being discussed intensively, and there are all kinds of efforts on behalf of the ZIA, that's the highest level of the association. And of course, many private sector companies are committing themselves to increased climate protection in their real estate portfolios. It's true that climate protection targets are increasingly being reflected in laws and regulations, but at the same time they're also presenting the industry with new challenges.
Ja, das ist zweifellos eine große Herausforderung.
Yes, there's no doubt that it's a big challenge, and I could imagine that it's also difficult, especially for smaller providers, to keep the team on hand to fulfill all these reporting obligations. That really has to be said. It certainly makes things easier for a firm of our size, but the reporting requirements according to SFDR in particular are very extensive and are pretty demanding on resources. And I think it also remains to be seen what will be done with all this data in the end. I think the reporting obligation is generally positive because it means that awareness is raised. On the other hand, there's the question of what will happen to the data that's being collected there. The effects of climate change are becoming increasingly apparent. In July 2021, the low-pressure area Bernd brought heavy rain to western Germany, causing severe flooding and extensive damage. Thousands of properties were damaged or destroyed, an event with quite an effect on the industry. We're actually directly affected. We come from Aachen, so our properties were also impacted by the flood disaster. We have 2 properties in Stolberg that were flooded. This was an event that we hadn't foreseen on this scale, and the buildings were unprepared for it. Preparation will continue to be a future challenge. But I was here today at the workshop where we brought together the real estate industry and the municipalities to actually say, how can this city, or the cities of Stolberg, Eschweiler and so on, in conjunction with representatives of the real estate industry and the construction industry, how can they position themselves in such a way that we bring the topic of resilience forward, and not only regarding flood protection, so that they can now also understand this change as an opportunity. They can even reprogram entire cities, because when rebuilding them one-to-one, perhaps they shouldn't necessarily rebuild what was there before. If they're going to spend money, they should also make these cities fit for the future. It's become a huge issue, but I don't want to limit it to the flood disaster alone. Climate protection and sustainable construction are expensive. At the same time, housing should remain affordable for tenants. Climate protection is of course a very important topic. On the one hand it's expensive, but on the other the costs of not doing it are always higher in the long term. For us as a society, but also in individual buildings and assets. Because we believe that buildings that are not climate friendly and cannot be improved and cannot be made sustainable will lose value in the long run. For landlords, this ultimately means having to actively discuss these issues with their tenants. We'll have to see how this can be duly implemented in an adequate relationship for both sides, the tenant and the landlord. In the residential sector, there's currently a discussion about how CO2 pricing will be handled, and whether it'll be split between landlords and tenants. That will remain exciting. At the end of the day, it has to pay off for the investor, although there's a realization and a willingness to work on these issues. The question is, how will all this turn out? It's going to be exciting and occupy us as an industry for the next few years. Sustainable building and climate protection. At EXPO Real, the real estate industry shows how seriously this topic is being taken.